conference going? Is it this level, or is it up to here already?
It's Friday, so it's all good. There's no pressure on Friday. On Monday, it's a whole different story. But no, it's okay. I mean, we're in pretty good shape. We're at this point exactly 28 days out. We're trying to pull together, and that's typical for.
That's just typical for it. So. Oh, sorry, it just broke up there for a second. So make sure.
Yeah, I was just kidding. Oops! Come on. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So let's see what happens. So, what you're saying about 28 days out?
I think we're in a pretty good spot for 28 days out. Fairly typical in terms of the challenges we have. We have most of the content is confirmed. Inevitably there are some dropouts this time of the year. There's some other challenges that we hadn't quite planned on, but you've organized these things also, so you kind of know the rhythm, right?
Yeah, it just I went to I think what kind of crystallized it to me before it was before I even did an event was that but it's also like kind of underscored each time we do an event is that I learned this in project management class in grad school, was that if you want a project to succeed, you're just going to be the manager who's going to have to sit there and make sure it happens. And like, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't, like, the project's going to happen if you want it to happen. You just have to be the person who's going to sit down and just plunk her down your 2 feet and to say it's going to happen. If you're not that person, then you're not a manager. It's not going to happen. So events will happen, like weird things will happen. And like one event, just like not as many speakers as SUPI, but I don't want to compare it myself, but to the management that you guys have to deal with. But we're en route to the venue across town, and someone who should be at the hotel called us, or no, should have been in the plane flying to the venue. He was calling me on the cell phone. I was like, and at the time they didn't allow cell phones at all, being on the plane. So I was like, well, something's not good. And it turns out he had to go to the ER the night before. It was not making it. And so we had like this 2-hour hole in our schedule, and with like almost no time to fill it. And so that was like mad dash scramble. It's only one of small things you have to do. So, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're, it's all part of the game, and ultimately the thing that you can't control, the one thing you can't control is the most important thing. Is the weather nice? And, particularly for something that what we're doing at the size of South by Southwest. If the weather is nice, that solves a magnitude and a multitude of sins. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's I do want to talk about Southwest, the and how it's grown and everything like that. But I just want to talk about also that you're so right about the weather, because there's nothing that beats an Austin spring South by Southwest. There's nothing that beats it. I remember one year we went, it was just like a cold front moved in for the interactive portion, and it was just like, as soon as music started, it was great, right? The music people had a great time, but I just remember just freezing, and it was like the last afternoon of interactive. It was just like a beautiful day out, and I was like, oh. But yeah. I will also say, like, if it does rain, I've never seen a more beautiful marketing campaign than when Zappos had branded ponchos when it rained, and they just give them out freely during that. I was like, I don't know how you knew it was going to rain that day or whatever, or like you had them ready to go, but it was just a beautiful marketing.
Tony planned for all contingencies, and if you, I mean, the kind of kicker to that story is that if you recall that was like there'd been a 18-month drought in Austin, so it was the first time it rained in a year and a half, and they somehow had it right. But there you go.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, because I would visit South by, or come to Austin for South by, and I always wondered what it'd be like to live here when it's not crazy with so many people. And so now I live here. So, but I do want to say thanks for freaking South by happened. So, and just so I could see the beautiful town. And
thanks for the nice words. It's certainly less what I or my team does and more about the community of folks that comes together for the event.
Well, it's an awesome backdrop for an awesome conference. So, so I want to talk about the growth of Interactive. I guess just make sure. So you've been there since day one of Interactive, is that right?
Yeah, I came in 1989. I came into South by Southwest in 1989, and then we launched Interactive in 1994. Although at that point it was called Multimedia, and the name, I think, changed over for a couple of years. We were Multimedia and Interactive, and then about 2000 we settled on Interactive.
Okay.
There was at one point we were going to call it South by Southwest Digital, and I remember, in your world, or more in your world, bouncing that idea off of Jeffrey Zeldman, and he's saying, we just settle on a name and don't quit changing, and you've got some brand equity already. Don't keep it as it is. So, if not for Jeffrey Zeldman, it would be South by Southwest Digital.
Okay. Well, I think Interactive is a great thing because it kind of, kind of like that. I don't know, like that the vibe of Austin and South, that you want to be interactive and communicate with people rather than place better than digital, I would say. So, but not the fact that you're in shopping the names now, but why have multimedia and digital component with a music festival that's already doing awesome? From what I've researched, like I didn't visit, but from everything I read, like it was South by Music was doing great, is doing great. Why was there? Because you were there in '89, 6 years for launching digital. Like why add that component?
Repeating your question back to you, that was what I asked many times when we were struggling. Why are we doing this thing? Because it didn't, when we first launched this thing, it didn't really make sense, I didn't think, in terms of the overall picture of what South by Southwest was covering. We were doing, we had this music event that was doing great. We had this film event that was growing, and we had this multimedia thing that again just seemed kind of out of place. We shifted over the years. We shifted the focus of the multimedia / interactive a little bit, but it also just it came to a point, or it's come to a point, where tech is the backbone to everything, and so it in retrospect, it makes total sense that we did this thing. At the time, it was not. It was people smarter than me understanding why we should do this thing.
Yeah. Okay. Because now in hindsight, you had like the whole music disruption with MP3.com. You had film disruption now with, I guess, YouTube, if you would say that, or sharing a video now, like with broadband, being able to do things, and also digital cameras being awesome. I guess that's. But yeah, you can definitely see it as a interactive being more growth. So how is the comparison between interactive and music and film? Is it people come more for interactive or music, or is music still the big thing? And
interactive is the biggest industry portion of the event at this point. Although in terms of total participation, meaning consumers, music still is much, much bigger, because you again got all these music fans coming to Austin at the kind of latter part of the week. The fact that interactive has grown bigger than music and film, I think makes sense, because again, there's a tech backbone to everything, or put it in Mark Andreessen's words, software is in the world, and you've got to, everything. There's a software or tech component, or even a hardware component to all these things now, and so much of how we consume or absorb or experience music at this point is very, very tech centric. Be Pandora, Spotify, things like that, and the same way on the film side. That as you said, something like YouTube, which is certainly led to a huge, or has led to a huge sea change in how narrative content is absorbed. So what's interesting, if you're looking at the kind of 30-year trajectory of South by Southwest, is that multimedia, when we started it, we really struggled. We had people coming who were having fun, but we really weren't growing as much as we wanted to. And multimedia probably would not have survived if not for this really strong music event that was supporting the thing. If multimedia had to be its own event, it wouldn't have survived. That has kind of flipped at this point, where interactive is again the bigger part from an industry perspective, and interactive is no longer being supported, but is more in the supporting roles, or is more the supporter of music and film.
Yeah, I will say, like, one of the first years when I was coming to South by, which is like mid 2000s or whatnot, like, and you said having fun, I was like, it was a total blast, because a lot of people I would meet online, or I would know only online. We'd only come and see each other in person at South by Southwest, and so these are the people who were helping, like, shape the digital landscape of what it was at that time. And so my story is that we went to some event at night, before there was lots of events at night now that there are now, and so we took a taxi cab, like a few of my colleagues and I, and we're just talking to the taxi cab driver. It was before Uber, of course, or before Uber left. And so we're talking about like South by South Interactive, or South by South by, and how awesome it is and everything like that. And taxi was like, "Yeah, it's great. Are you guys gonna come to it next week?" And we're like, "What do you mean?" Like, "Oh, that's when music starts." Like, "Oh," like, we went from like just being like awesome high. Interactive doesn't even register on these people's minds. So
yeah, but looking back, it was much cooler then, when it didn't register, when taxi drivers didn't know what it was.
But yeah, so I want to talk about so interactive is a huge thing, but I do want to talk about the like how many, in terms of numbers. I remember, like, around December, you were actually on our local news, and I just, I don't really watch local news that much, but this time I actually had local news on, and you came on. You were on there talking about South by Southwest, and how about 80,000 people were coming. Is that right, about projected, or came last year?
I think the figure is 70,000, and those are all badges combined. That's
Okay.
Everyone who had a badge for South by Southwest: music, film, interactive, platinum, at that point gold, were in one place at one time.
Okay.
Thank goodness that doesn't happen in any circumstance, because that would be a total nightmare. But yeah, that's the number that when you add all the badges together, and we've kind of peaked at that number, or haven't grown a whole lot on that over the last few years. That's probably a good thing, because we had several years where we were just growing at a really insane pace, and hard to keep up with that growth, or hard to manage that kind of growth. I think we'll see a little bit of a spike again in 2018, i.e. next year, because we've got the Fairmont Hotel, big Fairmont Hotel coming online downtown. But I would also say that I'm on your show because there are so many people coming to an event like South by Southwest, are coming to a South by Southwest. But I always try to stress to my staff and stress to myself that the goal is quality, not quantity. If we do quality stuff, the quantity will take care of itself. And and that'll be fine. And in fact, I mean, I think in many ways the quantity is its own enemy. I mean, people like big numbers, but they also like a sense of intimacy, which is in some ways harder to get at an event the size and scale of South by Southwest.
Yeah, I would say I do appreciate the last couple of years that I've gone that the size is so big, but however the curation is really focused now. So for instance, I wanted to investigate a certain track. I forgot, maybe it was bots or something like that at the time. I think we had a robot petting zoo or something like that. And so all the things that were related to it were actually in the same venue. So I didn't have to go walk across town to another hotel or back to the conference center or something like that. So that was
yeah. But I'd also say that's that's one of the challenges of our growth is that when we were slightly smaller and everything was in one venue, all the interactive session content, panels or presentation was in one venue. You could, see a panel on bots, and then you could walk to the room next to it and see a panel on social media, then walk to the room next to it and see a panel on, wearable technology.
Oh yeah.
And I think people really loved that kind of cross-pollination. Now, as you mentioned, you can stay in one hotel and see all the bot-related panels, but if you want to go to social media, you got to walk across the street, and and if you want to see wearable, you got to go walk across the street again. So it in some ways leads to more segregation and more kind of in the current vernacular filter bubbles that you don't get out of, and that's in a way a challenge of where we are now.
Yeah. I will say I definitely agree on all those points because I remember one time one of the best panels I saw for 1 year was I was so burnt out, and I was like I'm an introvert, so I got to dive into some other panel room and just chill out in the back room. And I just happened to go on this panel. It was the most amazing panel because I never would have gone otherwise. And it was the first time I learned about second story, and I was like, wow, this is amazing balls, because I never think that this would happen. And now in the future now we have VR being the buzz too. So it was amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the other kind of neat things about, again, I'll say an event like South by Southwest is, as much as you plan out your schedule and I want to go to this session and this session, inevitably or almost inevitably, the coolest thing you see is the panel that you had no idea about. You just walked in because you wanted to sit down, or the band that you had no idea this band existed. It turns out there's a rap group from Iceland or something, or a film that you weren't planning on going to. But again, the fact that there are all these different kinds of options, and often the best discoveries happen by complete accident or serendipity, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, and it's tough to sell that to people sometimes, because it's they have to justify the badge. It's it's a phrase I've learned by Southwest, but is justify the badge, because you have to sometimes you have to say, well, I'm going to this conference because I'm going to learn XYZ or whatever. And it's something that as a conference organizer for CSDevConf and other conferences we've done, which is we want to make sure people come and get some practical knowledge, but at the same time, it's that cross pollination that you don't get at other venues. Like you talked about in the early days, where I think one of the great things was the in the hallway discussions between sessions was always great, because you talk to people and bounce ideas off of and talk about where you are and it's off the grid, but nothing that's documented on the actual schedule. In terms of you will be meeting XYZ and it will change your career path. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's fun or interesting or whatever that you bring up the hallway discussions. I remember somebody did a graphic I cannot remember what it was, but what was the best part of South by Southwest? Panels, parties, or hallway discussions? And hallway discussions came out as number one. It's we work all this time on panels, and they the hallway discussions are much better, but there you go. But I mean, I think that said more diplomatically or whatever, that speaks to the value of any event, which is networking. You can learn a lot of stuff in panels. You can get a lot of great information there, but inevitably conferences are best for meeting new people, networking, creating new opportunities that way.
So I do want to talk about like, I'm trying to be polite about this as much as I can, but our industry has I think more than usual number of introverts, and so how do you get people talking? More so, do you plan on that at all, or do you like because you have lots of content people can see actually go to, but like networking and just people who come to network, that's they're easy at that, but in terms of like meeting people, is there something you plan for, or
well, that's a great question. I think that I am very introverted myself, so I have that same challenge. We have certainly in more recent years incorporated more meetups into the event, and I think that's a nod to trying to create a safer space for introverts to talk, to connect, to meet. We were doing, and we don't quite so much do it anymore, these things called core conversations, which were really kind of a rip-off of the hallway stuff. It was trying to create that in a room where people would just get in a circle and talk. But I do, I think that, to your question or your point there, as much as the event has grown, and as much as there are more kind of big parties or networking events, I think those are that is a challenge to introverts like you and me. If like, yeah, that seems cool, but am I going to know anyone there? No, maybe not. I'll go check email in my room.
Yeah, and sometimes you just get burnt out if they charge you batteries.
Yeah.
So what is a meetup? Because I don't think I've been to a meetup yet. I think I may have been one or two, but how would you define a meetup? So
well, I think that we essentially modeled these after, I guess it was O'Reilly who used to call them birds of a feather or something, and it was also adding more meetups into the schedule, or creating that was a realization that we did need to help that networking process, and that the event had grown to a size that it was harder to meet the people you wanted to meet. I had always resisted the meetup concept or the birds of a feather concept for a while, because it's like, yeah, people meet organically here, and we don't want to mess with that. I mean, that's the beauty of the event, that people get together and meet at a party, they meet at a panel, they meet in the hallway. That's good, but as the event grew, realized that it was harder for people to do that. So it could be a meetup for WordPress bloggers, or a meetup for IT professionals in government. Theoretically, if you're an IT professional in government, and or if you want to meet IT professionals in government, that would be the place you would go. And it's we don't do a whole lot beyond that, except provide a room for an hour, and tends to, or hopefully leads to, good conversations, good connections, people making new friends, new contacts that way.
Okay. So one of the unique things about South by Southwest I find is that you ask for speaking submissions like 8 months in advance. Is that like about 8 months? Like, it seems like, I think June or July before March. So I'm not sure. So it just seems like a long ways out. So, but how many submissions do you usually get, and how many do you have to filter out? Like,
last few years, we've been in the 4,500, 4,700, 4,900 ballpark on these entries.
wow.
And that again that pace of growth has slowed down some. When we first started doing this, we were increasing, doubling every year for 3 years, and it's like, oh hell, how are we going to keep this up? But then it kind of slowed down a little. There are many reasons for doing the system this way. I think part of this is that I inevitably found that there were people in the community who knew a lot more about the given topic than I did. I mean, I could, read a article in Wired and say, well, oh, this is a pretty cool article. Let me try to find this person online and try to connect with them. But it might work better if that person who wrote the article or who was mentioned in the article was putting together the panel or putting together the talk, and kind of this community / distributed network of creating content for the event. That was one reason to do it. Two, having done, the experience of South by Southwest was always that, as we got closer to the event, i.e. a month out, I'd be getting flooded by people who had these great speaking ideas. And at that point, it was kind of too late to deal with them. So having this entry period of ideas that was well in advance of the event was a way to try to wrangle that. Now, certainly one of the many downsides of having this kind of process is that, in the tech world and in various other worlds, a lot can change in 7 or 8 months. So what was the hot technology in the summer may not be so hot come February or March. And other issues can happen. We try to counter that now by leaving some space for things that happen between now and then. So kind of try to split the middle there. But again, this idea of taking entries and ideas from our community very much reflects this concept that I have, that the community that comes to South by Southwest knows the event, knows the audience, knows the issues much better than we do. And the more we can listen to what they're talking about, what they're thinking about, what they're working on, the smarter we can be.
Yeah, the submission process, like I said, you call it panel picker, which is grew out of interactive, I assume, from what it's also used for the other festivals, like music and film as well.
Correct. We morphed it over to. It started interactive, and then over the last say 5 years, we've now used it for most of our session ideas. So use it for music and film also. But I'll say that we tend to get much more entries on the quote interactive side, or the more technical, more tech related concepts. And I think that reflects that the tech people, geeks, nerds, however you want to phrase it, are just more into this kind of process, and maybe a bit more organized too.
So I will say that the submission level for submitting to South by Southwest is a lot higher than it was when I submitted, because now it's like now you're asking for like a video for someone talking about the idea. It's like, I think, like maybe 2 forms of ID. I'm not sure. Not sure. But it just seems a lot higher. And so I think, is that? I guess my question is, like, why ask for the video? And I guess at the same time, I feel like, do you use that just to make sure someone speaking can speak very well, or is that just, or they're like knowledgeable of the topic, or like what are you trying to deduce from someone from a video submission? I think.
Great questions. The video, a couple of reasons there. One, we know that producing a video may be a little bit harder than writing an application. So it's kind of a little bit more of a barrier to entry as a way to slow down the number of entries we were getting for the panel picker. Second point there is the panel picker is great in a lot of ways in terms of, wow, this is a great idea. Something I'd never thought of before, something we want to have involved with South by Southwest. But one of the things a panel picker doesn't do well on its own is, discern the ability of the person to speak. Is he a good speaker? Mm-hmm. He or she a good speaker? And that speaking is a three-dimensional, if not more dimensional process. And when you see someone who's a really good speaker, you realize that this person can talk about a rock and make it interesting. By comparison, someone who is not a very good speaker, hasn't honed their speaking skills yet, can have the best topic in the world, but they can make it sound, their presentation may be boring, hard to follow, not good if they haven't honed their speaking skills. So again, the video helps us understand a little bit more of how that process, the speaking process. And sorry, Chris, I'm running out of power, so I have to.
Oh, no problem.
What's I think also interesting in the years since we started doing the panel picker is, yes, we do ask for a video now and use those videos a lot, watch those videos. But, what's changed a lot is that so many of the people entering the system at this point have a TED video that you can look at. And that's, again, completely different than 10 years ago when we started doing this. I mean, it's maybe not the main TED in Vancouver, but it's a TEDx video. So we can watch the video that they entered via South by Southwest or via the panel picker, but we can also, hey, this is how they, this is what they sounded like. This is what they, this is how they came off at TED. So again, that's just a change in how the internet has evolved, that so many people have videos online now, whether they like it or not, that shows reveals their ability to speak or lack thereof.
Okay. Yeah, I just know when, back then, I know times change. So it's just that one of the things I liked about South by Interactive was I felt like it was it would be a place where I would try something new, like a new speech or new presentation, or it would be someone's first time speaking. And I know on panels, I got a few people who never spoke before say oh, this would be great. Just want to get you talking about what and stuff like that. And so video is kind of a barrier to entry for that, like you mentioned, but I feel it's also times have changed, videos everywhere, and it's it's easier. Your laptop will have a video camera now installed, so it's pretty easy to start talking about it. So
I think your point is really good there. I think that one of the in our best days at South by Southwest, we are about discovering what's going to be interesting, hot, important in a couple of years. So it's great if and when we are discovering or uncovering new talent that hasn't spoken a whole lot. And I think that one of the great things about the panel picker, or the great ideas about the panel picker, was that it would help us get people into the system who weren't just the same people who were always speaking at tech events. Mm-hmm. And nothing against those people, because there are a lot of great speakers who make the rounds to tech events, but it was a way to try to get new voices into the mix. Now, how that goal intersects with the realities now of when we're getting 4,500 total speaking proposals is maybe that's harder to get new people into the mix just because it's so competitive. But again, whether it's a new speaker, a new band, a new filmmaker, South by Southwest is very much a forum, a venue, a stage for new ideas, new talent, new ways of doing things.
Yeah, I think but I guess for film also, like I said, for the film presentation, they would actually have to watch films, but there's also sessions about making films and also I guess for the music as well. There's sessions about the not making music in the industry for that too. So I guess, and they would be using the panel picker for that, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, and cool, awesome, yeah. So, panel picker, you get like what 5,000 max, like not like I'm rounding up 5,000.
Don't round up. That makes it even more complicated.
Well, I didn't want to say like I am. I didn't want for clarification. I am thankfully advisory to SoftBank Interactive, so I actually go through hundreds
God bless you for that too.
So, and so hundreds of submissions, and let's just circle back and make sure the people who may not know and would like to speak at South by Southwest just talk about the process for submitting. So let me just lay down the way I understand it, and if you fill any rough spots that might be there. But if I'm a speaker, I submit this form, which includes a video that we discussed. But then it goes through a process of like a portion is vetted by, not vetted, but it goes through South by officials, and then also goes through advisory board. But it's also, there's a part of voting up and down, like thumbs up, thumbs down, right, for the community at large. Right. And then so is that accurate? And also, what happens through that life cycle of being picked?
We have 3 different inputs, numerical inputs for every speaking proposal that we get, and from that we get a total score, and that total score is very important in terms of which proposals we accept and don't accept. That idea of having 3 different inputs was modeled or inspired by our 3 checks and balances of power we have in Washington, D.C., or we used to have. Insert joke there. But the idea being that, if John Smith has 3 million followers on Twitter and he tells everyone to vote for his panel picker entry, that he may get a huge outpouring of votes, but that if the advisory board, the fact that we had an advisory board rating these things, and we also had staff rating these things, that those 2 million votes he pulled out or whatever would not unduly influence the process or his or her score. So if the public loves the idea but the advisory board hates it, probably won't get in. If the public hates the idea, but the advisory board loves it, probably won't get in. Things that do get in are ones that tend to score somewhere in the middle, where the public generally likes it, the advisory board generally likes it, staff generally likes it. Again, what we come up with is a score based on a 0 to 100 scale that leverages all those inputs.
And then, but you asked for the sessions like in June, July. I'm not sure exactly what date. So, but it takes. How long do you think it takes to go through that whole system before you first notify? Like I think you announce it in waves, right? So it's like so how long does it take to go through the system? You think?
We accept proposals generally starting in July. The end of the deadline is late July or early August. At that point, we have about 6 weeks of advisory board evaluation, of staff evaluation, as well as general public voting. So we announce the bulk of our accepted sessions, usually at this point, I think around October 20th, October 21st. And then, we'll pull in more sessions after that, but mainly after that, we're announcing bigger name speakers that we essentially curated. And I think that's an important part of the process also to talk about, is that, at this point in the growth of South by Southwest, we are able to get, or often able, knock on wood, to get big name speakers. With, last year's, the fact that the President Obama spoke at the event, reflective of that. But even within those big name speakers, 95% of the people who speak at South by Southwest are people that you probably haven't heard of yet. You may hear of them in a few years. You may, they may never go on to be big stars, whatever that means. But again, it's mainly for up and coming voices, as opposed to huge names like President Obama or Michelle Obama, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say, like, this presidential seal right here in my office that you get people to say, this is a prop I made for when I spoke at South by Southwest. So I wanted to, because the President Obama spoke the same year, so I was like, I just slapped it on top of my podium as well. So it was
nice.
Yeah, so I was like, I want to feel important too. I was like, hey, look, hey.
And did you have as much of a Secret Service detail as he did?
No, I forgot to put my request in. So. I must admit. So, cool. Yeah. So I think there is that curation process where, like, you do want to, get the, create the, like, keynote speakers as well, but also try to make sure the, I guess, the foundation, if you will, like the large foundation is of the checks and balances with the panel picker too. So
yeah, and again, that large foundation is, I think, and I hope, and our goal, that we hope that that's very reflective of the South by Southwest community, that the virtual and real world community that participates in the event year after year.
Awesome. All right. What, I guess you're in a very unique position because you've seen Interactive grown from this small thing for I think it was also like I think the actual doing the research, like, it took 10 years for Interactive to be positive, right? So what challenges, but also, I guess my big question is this, like, what challenges that are unique to South by that you didn't think that other conferences don't have, or other mega conferences that have that?
Well, I think that again, at this point in our evolution, we are like so many other companies or startups that were lucky enough to succeed or grow, and that scale becomes its own challenge. The beauty of South by Southwest is there's so many people, and there's so many different things going on, and there's so much activity. The curse of South by Southwest is there's so many people and so many things going on and so much activity. It is, at this point, hard for things, people, products, services, startups to cut through all the noise. Certainly for South by Southwest, for our growth, the tipping point was 2007, and I think you were there in 2007 when Twitter, quote unquote, launched at the event, quote unquote, because they'd already been out for a while. But it was such a different event at that point. It was so much smaller. It was easier for one breakout app to dominate everything. Where we are with the growth now, it's much, much harder to do that. I made the mistake 2 years ago of saying, there will never be another Twitter-like thing at South by Southwest. And of course, a month or 2 weeks later, Meerkat, had a similar explosion at South by Southwest. So it's still possible for things to dominate so much of the conversation. I just don't think it's as possible as easy as it might have been before. I'll also add that Meerkat and Twitter and Foursquare are anomalies. Most companies, most startups, most people who attend South by Southwest don't have that kind of buzz or create that kind of buzz, but that's fine. That they make smaller connections that lead to smaller things that lead to bigger things, and that's the experience for most people at South by Southwest or other events. You're making connections that lead to things that help you along the way. There are a very small few that create such an impression that they just skyrocket to the top. But again, that's the exception and not the rule.
yeah, if you don't mind making a sports metaphor here, it's like you don't need a grand slam. Sometimes you just need a double,
Sometimes you need a bunt single. Come on.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
need to get on base, and maybe, catcher drops the ball. You can trot into second. There's an error next play.
Exactly. It's like in scoring position. You don't need to, like you don't need to score runs. You just need to get in scoring position.
Absolutely.
Cool. Since you brought it up, actually, I do want to circle back. Is like I do want to mention, President Obama. How much effort was that to? You mentioned Secret Service. Like, how much of a effort was that? Like how did you know when you had him as a speaker, and how much of planning went into that before he actually showed up and onto the stage? Like, how much effort was that?
Certainly, it was a significant effort on a level that we'd never done before, mainly because of the security. On the other hand, he has a team of a couple hundred people who do this all the time, and they were very easy to work with, but also were, said in a firm but very polite way, we do this all the time. We know what we're doing. We can, we got this. Yeah. So in some ways it was difficult, but in some ways it wasn't. We've certainly had other big name speakers who've been harder to deal with, who've had more exorbitant demands, much more exorbitant demands, who've had more, ego in the game, that have been harder to deal with. I think the other thing to say to you and your audience and point out here is, the link between what I mentioned before and President Obama at 2016 was Jason Goldman. He was part of that initial Twitter team. He was like employee number 5 or something. He was in South by Southwest in 2007 when they, had their big push. He eventually left Twitter. He went to Google for a while. I think there was one other stop along the way, but for the last 2 years, he's been the chief digital officer at the White House. So he did his experience at South by Southwest was one of the big factors in helping to persuade the White House that this was going to be a great thing for the president. And by all accounts, President Obama very much enjoyed his brief trip to Austin. They feel like they accomplished a lot. It certainly helped us a lot. So it was a very, very positive experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that was awesome. Like, kudos to the whole team for that. So it was awesome to have him here and have him experience a real barbecue as well from here.
I think it was Torchy's this last trip, actually.
Torchy's last time? Okay, yeah, that's right. He did taco thing. Yeah, I remember last time he went to Franklin's.
Right? Yeah,
that was it. Yeah,
cut the line.
Cut the line. Yeah, I did talk to Franklin about that, and he did try. He said he did give him a hard time. So that was pretty. So.
But not too hard, I hope.
Not, yeah. Guys, like these, so I think he still gave him a book or something. But was but cool, awesome. So South by Southwest, 28 interactive, 28 days away. Tickets are still on sale. I just got the email. So definitely the prices go up though soon. Is that right? I think
today, February 10th, is the deadline before it goes to walk-up price. So if you're watching live, buy now. If you're not watching live, you missed out on the opportunity to save $100.
Okay. All right. Cool. Awesome. And then and if people, I think a lot of people who listen probably may want to speak. So definitely for next year, if they don't make it this year, if they wanted to go to the event, but Panel Picker opens up usually like June. Is that right? Or
no. Aim for right after the 4th of July is when
4th of July.
Okay. And it doesn't. It's usually open for a 3-week period, and it doesn't matter if you enter your panel ID on the first day or the last day. Mm-hmm. Typically, we get the last day is when we get the huge rush of speaking ideas.
Okay.
For there is very creative ideas that focus on the future, on what we think is going to happen next. One of the unintentional upsides of the panel picker is that it helps us, again, it serves as kind of a barometer. And one of the examples from this year is that for the 2017 panel picker, i.e. ideas that were entered last summer, we ended up having like 24 different ideas that either mentioned bots in the title or the description, bots or chat bots. And that compared to 2016 when we had 0 ideas
right.
mentioned that in the title or the description. So, I mean, that's pretty strong indication when we're looking at something like that, wow, everyone's focused on bots now, or this thing is really, really pushing. And you might, the cynics in us might say, yeah, that phase went a little bit too fast and too strong. But again, when we tend to look at those things, chart those things that, wow, we got a lot of panels this year, or a lot of proposals this year on blank topic. We didn't have any of these last year. This is something we should focus on a lot more. Or, wow, we had lots and lots of sessions last year about blank, and this year that's decreased. So maybe that didn't turn out to be as big a deal as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I will say, like, for that's just nature of technology, right? Like, just fades in, fades out. Like, I think I talked about CD-ROMs last interview, but as one technology that we don't really deal with anymore. But and also, like, Austin is great for bots as well, because we had last year we had the I forgot what the name of it, Talkabot conference. I was here.
Ben's thing, and it was, I guess, in September or October at AT&T, and there is a pretty neat little bot scene happening here. So yeah, again, that is something that we'll see a lot of in 2017 at South by Southwest and at various other conferences and conventions, I think, as well. I mean, you can pretty easy to say that's a kind of the tip of the iceberg on the kind of AI functionality we'll be seeing over the next few years, where right now it's a telephone. Who knows that right now it's your smartphone. Who knows if in a year or 2 years you'll have that kind of bot functionality that's attached to your refrigerator. You can ask your refrigerator, what do I need today? And they'll tell you that the milk is low and you need to go out and get more milk. Or maybe they can automatically page the drone, and the drone will come drop milk on your front doorstep. Right.
Well, I could have a fridge connected to your Instacart grocery delivery service. That'd be great.
There you go.
But before my coffee, though, my fridge will probably be the best person to ask what I need. So.
Yes. Nice.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Hugh, for taking your time today, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for inviting me on the show. It's been fun to talk to you about the history of the event.
Cool. Awesome. And best of luck to you and your crew for South by Interactive. And I'm looking forward to enjoying it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. See you, man.
Thank you.